purpose of Freethought Forum is to be vigilant to the encroachment of religion into government and to educate the general public as to what a freethinker is.
My thoughts give me power.
No scholar can map them.
No hunter can trap them. No person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei. No person can deny. Die Gedanken sind...
Hello, my name is Hugh Henry, and welcome to Freethought Forum. What we're doing on this program is something we've done before, but we have lots of material, so we can do it again. It's called Blast from the Past. And it's things from, well, before I ever got involved with this, and some of it's probably before I became an atheist, and some of it I think is before I was born. We have here with us Catherine Fahringer, atheist activist and former host of our show, and Sally Chizek, another atheist activist, and they have brought some blasts from the past. So, Catherine, what have you got for us?
Gosh,
I'm on first. Trying to say we're old.
Is that what it is?
I think he's trying to say that.
He's rushing us so that we don't die on camera. Is that the... But this is a wonderful book, and it was written in the 60s. It's called Praise the Lord for Tax Exemption. And the subject, as you know, has been going on, the argument about it for years and still continues to this day. So I like this, Father Richard Ginder. The Catholic Church must be the biggest corporation in the U.S. We have a branch in almost every neighborhood. Yeah, I'll drink to that. Our assets and real estate holdings must exceed those of Standard Oil, AT&T, and U.S. Steel combined. And our roster of dues-paying members must be second only to the tax rolls of the U.S. government. That's from our Sunday Visitor, May 22nd, 1960. They've had a plan from the very beginning, I'm sure, and it certainly helps them to have all this tax exemption stuff. Now, I marked a few million things in here, so you can see my favorite way of doing it is to put little stickies on. And there's, well, of course, when you hear any figures today, what do you do for inflation? Is it quadruple, or do you have any idea what the level from the 1960 to today?
Oh dear, there was a huge inflation during the 70s, of course.
Mm-hmm.
Let me think. My parents moved into their dream house, which was the most expensive house that they ever bought, and that was in 1960, and that was $20,000 on a lot on the top of the hill on the best lot.
Wow.
And my father got a second car for work, and I believe the car cost about $500. Wow.
Well, things have changed.
And gas was 30 cents a gallon.
I think it was 20. They were having a gas war when we got here in the 70s, early 70s, 70. And it was like 26.
Yeah, but we were in California.
Oh, well, you were in the big dollar area anyway. Anyway, this says, Table 2, it should be pertinent to supply more detailed information concerning the Protestant denomination. Now we're going to hit on the Protestants. Table 2, principal Protestant and miscellaneous bodies and churches. This is 1968. The Adventists had 3,873 churches, and the Protestant Episcopal Church had churches 7,562. This is just giving you some ideas of, let's see, what's, I expect the Church of God in Christ, that's probably enormous now, isn't it? And the church is 4,500. I suppose you could double almost any of these figures for number of churches. In 1785, Catholics comprised 1/2% of the population and 1.5% of the religious community. In 1890, these ratios had grown to 13.25% and 30.45% today. Well, today they are 23.8 and 34.9. In 185 years, they increased from 18,200 to 47,468,333. Okay, now every time you hear an increase, that means an increase in taxes. This is meaning that our tax base is by the year shrinking, because these churches,
they don't pay.
There was one thing in here about a bowling alley that was being built in the basement of a Catholic church. And
They don't put them in basements anymore now.
Well, I guess not.
They put them in a separate building next to the
Oh, they have
parking
big
lot.
gymnasiums and the whole works. Yeah, they have
And
complexes now.
it's not just the Catholics.
Yeah, but this was in the actual church building, and they wanted to tax it. And the Catholics put up such a stink that they won. They always do. They have a wonderful way of doing it.
There was something in the news today as I drove in that one of the states, and I don't remember which one, had just passed a whole series of amendments to their laws concerning statute of limitations having to do with the church and with priests.
Yeah.
And they shifted everything out by about 10 years. And then they specifically said if there had been intimidation of the people who brought the charges, or if there had been fraud, there was no statute of limitation. They pulled the plug on that. And I don't remember whether it was Illinois or someplace up in the Northeast. But they said that other states are beginning to pass those same laws. So perhaps this overwhelming pressure that has been brought to bear in the past, not so much pressure these days, or at least not as effective.
Well, I would hope that something would be done soon. And Bush with this crazy idea of cutting all the rich. Well, they're the churches, aren't they? They're the ones with all the money. The Catholics just brag they own half the country. Where's that good part about, oh, this is such a delicious book, I can't tell you. It's just absolutely, I could eat it.
Oh, dear.
The press itself is calling for significant tax reform. An editorial in the New York Times, January 31st, 1969, cautiously favored a proposal which would transfer from the state to the local community the right to pass upon individual exemptions. It should be the community's province, the Time declared, to decide which activities it will subsidize by excusing them from property tax.
He's probably not an editor anymore.
Probably not. He lost his job.
He probably lost his job, but
Yes.
quick.
I tell you, this just goes on. Oh, I'm so excited. This book is so good. It's almost Sally's turn.
No, go ahead.
This is
I'm
great.
enjoying it.
Yeah, the Knights of Columbus.
Is it safe to turn you loose on these things?
The business investments of the Knights of Columbus, a fraternal group closely related to the Catholic Church, I'd say they're closely related, are impressive. They have a vast insurance business, and in 1966 reported assets of $281 million plus. The order owns land under Yankee Stadium. I thought that would interest you, which it leased back to the Yankee organization in 1961 for 24 years at $182,000 per year.
Excuse me, does that mean they own what is possibly the Hoffa gravesite? Oh, well.
I don't know. They pretty much own everything. On December 31st, 1965, the Knights reported their portfolio included $55.6 million in securities. They also they own also the $4 million Styx Bear, the Fuller Dry Goods Company, property in St. Louis, the former New Haven Railway headquarters, Crucible Steel, Detroit warehouse. Well, some of these now wouldn't be much of anything, but I'm sure they've turned a nice profit for them.
Well, they probably sold those and bought something better.
Yeah, a Sheraton Hotel in New Haven, department stores in Camden, New Jersey, and Philadelphia. They own $1.8 million steel tube mill of the Bridgeport. We forget steel. It's gone to Japan or somewhere. Where has it gone?
You're not going to tell me this property is exempt, are you?
Of course, they own all this stuff. Everything. They had a little problem here with the parking lot that a Baptist church downtown was renting out during the week. They don't need it, so they rent it out and they make money. And so the IRS said, well, we want some of that as ours. That's part of us, but you've got a business going there. And guess what? It went to the Supreme Court, the Supreme, not the Texas Supreme.
Yep.
And they said, oh, no, you can't tax that. They've got businesses galore. Well, anyway, it's Sally's turn before the program's over.
Well, I don't know. I'm enjoying that so much. That is a good book. Well, this is what, the 60s? So we're moving right along, and then we're going to go to the 99.
Oh,
1999.
Okay.
So this is really
Recent blast.
this is the Express News, September of 99, and they banned 42 books in the schools for the year before. And the reason was insensitive to people that were overweight. Of course, I can relate to that.
Yeah, so can I.
And also demon worship. Now,
Human worship.
the ACLU considers a book banned if they take it out of the library, a school library, or if they change the curriculum for a particular school. So some of the books that they banned was books by Judy Blume, Blubber, and I imagine that's the one that is insensitive to people that are overweight. And I think she's a very good writer. She writes for teenagers.
Yeah, trying
and
to
she's a
help
very
them
good
with
writer,
life.
or at least she was up until the time that her daughter was killed.
Oh.
And then she turned to a psychic, and so, you know, kind of went that way a little bit. But before that, her books were very good. Then there's one with from Raoul Dahls, and it's James and the Giant Peach.
Oh, dear.
And what was wrong with it?
That was banned at elementary school in Lufkin, just
Because of the
east
peaches?
of
That
Tyler.
good for kids or what?
It was banned because they used the word ass.
Oh, ass.
Oh, well, gotta get rid of
I mean,
that.
Hey, gotta ban that then. Then there's one called Primates, A Higher Intelligence by Eulalia Garcia. And that was banned in Plano. That's, you know, just north of Dallas. And it was banned because they spoke of evolution and naked men, and that was just considered too inappropriate for 7-year-olds.
Right, gotta get rid of that.
Yeah. Down with
Now,
evolution.
this one, and this is for high school, and actually they probably should have been teaching this book in middle school, but it says, What's Happening to My Body? A book for boys. And it's by Linda Madaras, which was discussing male puberty. And the reason this was banned in Weatherford, the reason being that it was too sexually explicit.
Oh,
Well, duh.
excuse me,
You know,
bodies have
how
parts.
are you going to talk about this? You're going to talk about cabbages? Or?
Yeah, cabbage
This
patch.
reminds me of some of the Freedom of Information documents you get back from the CIA, where they're all blacked out except for a period up here down
And
the
a
corner.
question mark there or
Yeah,
something.
question mark, right?
Right. Sure gives you a lot of information.
Yeah.
And then there was When Plagues Strikes, and that's a history of diseases by James Gilblin. And it was banned for an elementary school again in Texas, in Houston, because it explained how HIV is transmitted.
Oh, we don't want them knowing
Let's
that.
Guys know they
let's
can't know
keep
that.
them in the dark.
Yeah,
Let's
we don't
keep
want
them
them knowing
ignorant. Okay. Well, parents and teachers, administrators tried to ban 129 books. So in the 1998 and 1999 school year, and that's down from 141. That's just an awful lot of books.
Is that because they got the 141 banned and now they're running out of books to ban, or what?
They couldn't get all of those banned. The Bernie High School tried to ban, and this a very good book, Snow Falling on Cedars.
Yeah, I remember
Oh, yeah.
that.
Okay,
Did that
the
get a
reason,
Pulitzer?
Huh?
Did that get a Pulitzer?
I don't know.
Or,
I think it was on the bestseller
Some
list.
sort of
It was on the
award.
bestseller list for
There's
sure.
also the one for children's literature. I don't remember the name of it that's given out, but I thought that was an award-winning book.
Yeah, this won something, I think.
Yeah.
This one
think
is
it was
a
Pulitzer,
murder
but-
mystery, and this is the reason it was banned. Graphic violence, racial bigotry, and sex inappropriate.
So they don't get television in Bernie then.
You think they didn't?
Well, I know they don't have any theaters. Now, I want to read to
Definitely not
you.
Miami Vice. They don't get that.
This is a very short letter that Irene Scharf from Helotes wrote on this very same subject. She says, the Bernie School District's recent banning of David, she said Gutterson's award-winning novel, Snow Falling on Cedars, came in time for Banned Books Week. She's a librarian, which ran through October the 2nd. She says, now that the title can be added to other books that have been banned at various times, such as Huckleberry Finn,
Oh, yeah.
Webster's Dictionary,
Oh, yeah.
Well,
And-
it's got penis in it.
and the Bible,
Oh, yeah.
for many of the same reasons, sex, violence, and racism.
Oh, well, the Bible. That's
Right.
a good idea. Let's ban that.
So they banned these
Be nice.
books for sexual content, for being too mature for a certain grade level, for religious or pagan content, and a combination of language, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, I just don't believe in telling people what they can read.
Well, okay, you're gonna have to bear with me on this.
All
I
right.
said this is
It's a long
long.
one. Okay.
Okay.
Shall I fold up all my
Hey, we've
equipment
got
and go
30
home?
minutes.
Oh, no. Whatever's in that ancient tongue.
Yeah, this
In
one
fact,
looks good.
why don't you bring that out next?
Oh, well, it's just a teeny little thing, but this was a 1952, Life used to put out kind of like annuals and have all the news spotted through it that was of the most important, I guess, of the year. And you rarely saw, really, this is probably more stuff. It's got, at least they admit there are other countries in the world besides the U.S., which is good. And they had something on Afghanistan, and it has pictures of little schoolboys in their little turbans. Should I say that, or is that's a no-no word, probably?
No, it's okay with me.
Anyway, whatever those little things they have on their head. It says, Afghanistan. As the situation in Iran grew more critical, concern mounted for Afghanistan as many realized, this is great realization, that its fate was closely tied to that of Iran. Who would have guessed? The United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization was aiding mass education in classes for adults. Afghan transport was primitive with few autos. Women wore the burqa, traditional Muslim headdress. Anyway, that just is what happened to those wonderful schools that they started in 1950.
You have something much more important there.
Well, hear about the Iran thing?
Yes. Would you read?
As 1950.
No, the title here.
Iran. How did he pronounce his name?
Mossadegh.
Mossadegh.
Yeah, Mossadegh.
Assumes dictatorial powers as world anxiously watches oil crisis. Well,
wait a minute. Let me tell you what that was about. Mossadegh was elected.
Oh, he was elected, but he was a dictator?
No. That's what Life magazine is telling you.
Oh.
Mossadegh was elected by the people of Iran, and he decided to nationalize the Iranian oil. The British and the French said, we can't put up with this. The CIA replaced him with the Shah of Iran, replacing a democracy with a kingdom.
But then this guy got assassinated, didn't he? Anyway, that's what it's referring to down here as the situation in Iran grew more testy. They realized they needed to turn their attention. Well, the schools was not. The thing that got me was what a good idea. But apparently it lasted 5 or 10 minutes, and that was the end of those schools, and then we went on to those terrible, what are they called?
I don't see any girls in that picture.
No, it says adults, but it doesn't say adult males only.
Actually, I don't think it did. I think it lasted until the Russians made their move.
Oh, really?
So they did quite well.
Yeah, well, it didn't take, though. I mean, it didn't seem to influence them to
Well, that's because there were decades of the Russian rule and then decades of the Taliban. But they were doing pretty well.
Well, I hear the Taliban has risen again.
Mossadegh, was he a mullah or?
No. He's the prime minister of Iran, elected to the position.
I know, but that doesn't, they have prime ministers now.
He made the mistake of nationalizing the oil, and that upset the West, so they upset him.
Right.
End of story.
Because they wanted the oil.
Yep.
Does that sound familiar?
No, not really.
Okay.
Well.
All right. This is kind of long. This is a radio broadcast aired on the American Atheist Radio series. Series begun in June 3rd, 1968, when Madeline Mary O'Hare took to the airwaves from KTBC Radio in Austin, Texas. This is program 397, Educational Riots of Catholics and Protestants. Now, you mentioned the Catholics at various numbers, so they weren't that many. Religious riots in the United States from 1844 to 1865, the beginning of the Civil War, centered over the school question. Philadelphia became a dangerous place, and then because part of the school children's daily dose of instruction was reading from the King James Version of the Holy Bible, the Roman Catholic bishop in that city took it into his head to petition the Board of Controllers to grant Roman Catholic the children the right to have the Dewey Roman Catholic version of the Bible read. Different version of the Bible, the Roman Catholic version. Surprise. In lieu of the King James. Instantly, a shriek went up that the bishop wished to have the Bible excluded from the schools. And there was a huge riot. During the evening, a few Irish collected rifles when the cry up to the nunnery went up, and volleys and rifles scattered the mob, and the next night there was a meeting in the State House. Anyway, the Protestants turned up in force, and lots of people died. And this goes on. But the interesting part, okay, the Know Nothing Party, the Irish famine of 1845 put thousands of Irishmen into their graves, but sent tens of thousands to the United States. Probably Madalyn Murray O'Hare's ancestors too showed up. To combat the influx of these Roman Catholics, a political party was formed. It came to be called the Know Nothing Party because it was very secretive. When someone asked questions of its adherents, they would say they know nothing about what was asked. One of the oaths of this party was to solemnly promise to swear in the presence of Almighty God never to vote for any man or any office if he be a Roman Catholic. The party participated in presidential elections of 1852 and numerous local elections. At its height, it had 1.5 million qualified voters in its ranks, a party only to put down the Catholics. In 1854, it won the state of Massachusetts, with both houses of the legislature almost 100% know-nothing in composition when the ballots had all been counted. In Delaware, various other candidates were elected to state office. Protestant New York, they totaled 122,000 of the 400,000, etc. Louisville, Kentucky, a celebration was held in the observance of Election Day on August 6, 1855. When the smoke had cleared, the Louisville Roman Catholic Cathedral was found to have been entered by a roaring know-nothing mob, and 25 Irish Americans were killed in a running street war. The Roman Catholic Church charged the city authorities, all know-nothings look calmly on, and they are now endeavoring to lay the blame on Catholics. And it just went on. Riots in Boston, 1853. 1854, a gang of know-nothings in Ulstermen, that's the Protestants of Northern Irish, raided the St. Mary's Church in Newark. One Irish American shot and killed, statuary destroyed. St. Anne's Church in Manchester, New Hampshire, raided 4th of July. Society of Jesuit Priests, John Baptist, tarred, feathered, ridden out of Ellsworth, Maine. 1855, Bloody Monday riot ravaged Louisville, Kentucky. 1856, elections between know-nothings and Irish Roman Catholics in Baltimore lead to riots. The Know-Nothing Party later died over slavery, but this does not stop small wars. In 1870, 2,500 Orangemen with their wives and families, those are Protestant Irish, picnicking in Elm Park, New York. 600 Roman Catholic Irish rushed them in revenge the death of the Catholic Irish alderman some months before. Several on both sides were killed, many wounded. The bloodiest massacre of Irish Roman Catholics came 1 year later, July 12, 1871, when New York militiamen killed 51. 100 Orangemen had determined that no such dirty thing should take place, yet the Orangemen paraded. They were chaperoned by 5 companies of militia. At 24th and 8th Street, the parade was rushed by Roman Catholics. The militia fired 1 volley to kill 51 of the Catholics, of the attackers. Irish religious riots in the United States of America during the 19th century.
And isn't that still kind of going on in Ireland?
Actually, things are a lot quieter than this.
Well, of course,
I have another
Right
question.
now.
I have another question on what you just read. Well, if the Bible is the Word of God, then how come we have a Catholic Bible that must say something different?
well, they have different 10 Commandments.
Funny you should mention that.
Yes.
You know, the one about idols and worshiping things.
The 10 Commandments, the
That's
first
not
commandment,
Catholic.
is different for Lutherans, Catholics, and Jews. So if you post the 10 Commandments in a courthouse, you have to decide whether you're going to use the Lutheran one, the Jewish one, or the Catholic one. Now, the Jewish one talks about the God of Israel, which brought you out of Egypt, which doesn't work with Christians, so they leave that out. The Lutheran one tries to hammer the punctuation together so that idols and worshiping gods, or making graven images, is separate from worshiping gods, so they're both condemned. The Catholic version tries to kind of mold them both together So it's only worshiping other gods, and making images is not that much of a problem.
Yeah.
So there are other
'Cause
gods then.
Yeah.
No,
tons of them.
it's just the images that's the problem.
Oh,
See, the Catholics do the images, Protestants never do that.
I think there are as many gods as there are people, because I've heard people talking about what God would do in certain cases, and one would say, my God wouldn't do that. The other would say,
because he's better than your God?
Well, he's right.
so it is the concept that people have of what, if they're good people, they got a good God. If they're bad people, they got a God that'll tell them anything, kill your kids, whatever, and they'll do it.
That sounds like part of the good God.
Well, at the risk of turning you loose, what else have you got?
Dangerous.
She's got good.
Well, I've
good
got
stuff.
grand. How about crime and immorality in the Catholic Church? Okay.
Now, wait a minute. When was this written?
1960, I think.
1960.
Yes, it's not yesterday.
Okay.
Let me
So
see.
things have been going on for a long time.
Sorry,
1962. Okay.
1962, and it's written by Emmett McLaughlin, who was a Catholic priest. So he knows. He's been there. He knows what's going on in the church. So let's see what goody thing I have. Okay. In spite of the vast distinction between mortal and venial sin, the Catholic Church uses strong emotional means to dissuade members from venial sin. Venial sin is a great evil. Next to the mortal sin, it is the greatest evil in the world, worse than the most painful sickness or the most dreadful form of death, the Catechism declares. In parish missions, the equivalent of Protestant revivals and retreats, days of concentrated prayer and preaching for priests and nuns, venial sin was pictured to us as worse than the greatest cataclysms of nature, as more evil than any destructive plague, and more horrible than the combined destructiveness of all of the world's bombs. But this eloquence did not for long affect us. Our moral reflexes had been so conditioned that a sin did not seem serious at all if we did not have to confess it, and if we could not be sent to hell for having committed it. Our norm of right and wrong was quite selfish. Our lodestar was hell. The welfare of our fellow men rarely concerned us. Wow. That's a little bit. Then over here, we've got a little bit more about...
Okay, we're running a little tight on time, so keep going.
Oh, we are? Okay, well, this has to do with a man who wrote a book about it. He said, traces the history of violations and sexual restrictions of the clergy from the Council of Trent, which Catholics are taught eliminated abuses within the church. Oh, down to its own time. The violations of celibacy plagued the early councils of Latin America as they had those in the Old World. Many of the early Spanish missionaries brought their concubines with them under the guise of relatives. This is my aunt, sister, whatever. Others kept native Indian slaves as concubines. Okay, we just got really celibacy. We got that nailed, haven't we? Okay, it's a time up. Okay?
Council of Trent was around, what, 1500, I think?
Yeah, I think so. Around about
So
there.
that's about
But
400
they're
years
still
ago.
bending that rule, though.
And that was to reform the Catholic Church from the days of the Borgia Pope, who had his own
Oh, he was a
concubine.
batty.
That's a whole program there.
If they're not careful, they're going to wind up with a whole new Protestant Reformation. Oh, well. Well, we've gone a long time back here now. When you get to the Council of Trent, you're really talking about blasts from the past. Thank you for watching Freethought Forum. This is Hugh Henry, your host, and goodbye.
I think as I please, and this gives me pleasure.
My conscience decrees, this right I must treasure.
My thoughts will not cater
To duke or dictator, no person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei, no person can deny. Die Gedanken sind frei. take me